He could command armies. He could not always command himself. That is the real story of Marcus Aurelius, not the marble bust, not the title, not the clean quote stretched across a screen. The man underneath all of it, tired, uncertain, writing in secret because power did not protect him from weakness. It just gave his weakness an empire to hide inside. He ruled Rome, but every single day he also had to rule Marcus. And some days Marcus lost. Start with the boy he was before any of this. He was not born into the purple. He was a Roman aristocrat with no obvious claim to the throne, more drawn to wrestling, hunting, and strangely for a boy his age, philosophy, than to politics or power. By the time he was 11, he had already adopted the rough cloak and simple diet of a philosopher in training, sleeping on the ground instead of a bed, just to test whether he could handle discomfort on purpose, long before anyone forced discomfort on him. Then the Emperor Hadrian noticed him, not because Marcus asked to be noticed. As a boy, Marcus had already earned a nickname from Hadrian Verissimus, the truest one, for an honesty that apparently stood out, even to a man surrounded by flattery his entire life. Hadrian was arranging his own succession years in advance, and he wanted Marcus eventually on the throne, but not yet, not directly. So Hadrian adopted Antoninus Pius, on the condition that Antoninus adopt Marcus as his own heir. A teenage boy who wanted books and quiet was suddenly written into the future of an empire by a dying man's political calculation. He did not choose this. It was chosen for him years before he had any say in the matter. The Stoic lesson starts right there, in the moment he didn't choose. You don't always pick the role. You only get to choose how honorably you carry it. He had teachers who shaped the man more than the title ever could. One of them, Junius Rusticus, handed him the writings of a crippled former slave named Epictetus, a man who had owned nothing, controlled nothing, and still taught that real freedom has almost nothing to do with circumstance. That single relationship planted the seed for everything Marcus would later write to himself, alone, in the dark, decades later, as emperor. The core of what Epictetus taught him was simple enough to say in a sentence, and difficult enough to take a lifetime to actually practice. Some things are within your control, and almost everything else is not. The market moving against you is not in your control. Someone's opinion of your channel is not in your control. An algorithm deciding to push your video or bury it is not in your control. What is in your control is your preparation, your discipline, your honesty with yourself, and how you respond once the outcome lands. Marcus did not invent this idea. He inherited it from a slave who had less freedom than almost anyone alive and somehow still carried more peace than most emperors. That should unsettle you a little. It unsettled Marcus enough that he kept writing it down, in his own words, for the rest of his life. The Meditations are not a triumph. They are a man correcting himself page after page in the dark. He never intended for anyone to read them. There was no audience, no publishing plan, no reputation to protect. Just a private notebook he carried into war camps to remind himself every single day who he was supposed to be, because power has a way of letting you forget. He writes about laziness, anger, death, pride, impatience, duty. He reminds himself of truths he already knows, because knowing something once is not the same as remembering it under pressure, when everything is collapsing around you. That is what makes him dangerous to ignore. If Marcus were perfect, he would be useless to you. We don't need proof that perfect people can stay disciplined. We need proof that struggling people can claw their way back. Don't use Marcus to escape your own humanity. Use him to fight through it with more courage than you had yesterday. His reign was not heavy in the abstract. It was heavy in the body. The Antonine Plague tore through the empire, entire towns gutted, the dead piling up faster than they could be buried, soldiers dying in their tents before they ever reached a battlefield. The Marcomannic Wars dragged on for years at the northern border, never fully won, never fully over, pulling him away from Rome for long stretches he never wanted and never planned for. He shared the throne for a time with a co-emperor, Lucius Verus, a man very different from him in temperament, and even that arrangement, built to split the weight in half, eventually left Marcus carrying more of it than he expected to carry alone. Personal loss found him too. Several of his own children did not survive past childhood. The empire did not pause, not for a single day, so he could grieve any of them. Marcus himself was not a physically strong man. Ancient sources describe him as frail, often ill, pushing through pain that would have benched a lesser-willed man for weeks at a time. He led campaigns and signed decrees while his own body was working against him, which means the discipline in his writing was never theoretical. It was the only thing standing between him and collapse on the days his body wanted to quit before his duties did. And still, he wrote, in army tents, in freezing camps, in the stolen hour after everyone else was asleep, not for applause, not for an audience, for alignment. So the man giving orders and the man writing in private were still, somehow, the same person. Here is the part most people skip past. Marcus could not personally oversee every province, every legion, every decision across an empire that stretched from Britain to the edge of Persia. He had to build systems. He had to trust governors he would never meet in person, generals operating weeks away from any message reaching them. Structures that had to keep functioning whether he was watching or not. A man who cannot rule himself, handed that kind of distance and that kind of trust, eventually destroys everything he touches. A man who has actually practiced internal discipline can extend that same discipline outward into structures that hold even in his absence. Clear chains of command, consistent standards applied whether he was present to enforce them or not. People trusted with real authority instead of being micromanaged into uselessness. That is the real test of whether your self-rule is real. Does what you have built still function on the days you are too sick, too tired, or too far away to personally hold it together? Marcus proves leadership starts on the inside, long before it ever reaches the outside. You may never rule an empire, but you are already ruling something. Your attention, your home, your work, your channel, your trades, your reactions, your promises. The trade you take before your mind is actually calm. The hour you waste instead of building what you said you would build. The promise you made to someone and quietly let slip because nobody was checking. Every one of those is a province you are either governing or slowly losing. And if you cannot govern those, more power will not save you. It will only hand you a bigger stage to fail on, in front of more people, with higher stakes than before. Marcus also turned this discipline toward the people who frustrated him, which might be the hardest version of self-rule there is. He reminded himself, again and again, that the people who annoyed him, disappointed him, or worked against him were not so different from him, equally capable of failure, equally fighting their own private battles he could not see. That did not make him soft. It made him harder to provoke, because a man who expects nothing else from broken people does not waste his energy being shocked when they act broken. If you are still losing your temper at the same predictable behavior from the same predictable people, that is not their failure to manage. That is yours. So pick one area of your life right now where you are demanding authority you have not actually earned through self-rule. Do you want respect but keep dodging responsibility? Do you want success but keep avoiding discipline? Do you want peace but keep feeding the chaos with your own hands? Do you want growth but flinch every single time correction shows up at your door? Rule there first, before anywhere else, before you ask for more. This is not a one-time fix. Self-rule is not a switch you flip once and trust forever. Marcus did not write one entry and consider himself cured. He wrote constantly because the same temptations kept returning in new disguises. A different kind of laziness on a different kind of day. a different provocation wearing a different face. Expect the same. The point is not to arrive at a finished version of yourself. The point is to keep showing up to the correction the way he did for as long as you are breathing. Tell me in the comments which one of those hit you the hardest. I want to know. Marcus Aurelius did not become great because he had power. He became great because he never stopped trying to become worthy of it. One failure, one correction, one private page at a time, written by a man nobody was forcing to keep going. That is the question sitting in front of you too, whether you wanted it handed to you or not. Not how much can you control. How much of yourself can you actually rule? If that question just landed, subscribe. This channel exists for people fighting that exact fight, one day at a time in private, the same way Marcus did.